Hi, and thank you for joining the Sustainability and Packaging session at the Sustainable Beauty East Summit. My name is Michael Tognetti, and I'm the Senior Director of Global Sustainability and Sourcing at WWP Beauty. Today, we're going to be talking about packaging and how you develop a sustainable packaging strategy by using design strategies, material strategies, and how you can use data to drive more sustainable packaging decisions while avoiding greenwashing at all costs. As a quick background on WWP Beauty, we've been in the beauty space for over 40 years, and we're a full service provider to the global beauty industry. So we supply packaging, filling, formulation, as well as accessories, and have a global team based here in North America with teams in Europe as well as the APAC region. Internally, we have in-house designers, engineers, product development experts, QC experts, as well as a whole wide range of internal resources. And we also have a number of fully owned manufacturing facilities. So when it comes to sustainability, our goal is that together we can create beauty with purpose. And so this is really looking at collaboration as the strongest approach to sustainability. And you're going to hear me say that a lot today. And the reason for that is we can't do it on our own. It really takes close work by manufacturers, brands, and industry groups to drive the industry forward. And the quickest way to get there is through collaboration. Internally, we've set goals that every new innovation we develop, every new component and package has to have a sustainable story. And that's combined with a number of other sustainable initiatives that help us support the growth and acceleration of sustainability for our brand partners. When you look at the framework that we've developed for building sustainable products, it covers a pretty wide range of areas. Just to touch on them briefly, looking at clean and conscious formulations, internally we use the Credo, Sephora, and Ulta Blacklist as our standard when developing formula collections, but we can develop outside of that as well, depending on specific brand blacklists. Eco-smart design and new materials. So this is really looking at the packaging. What design strategies can you use? How do you evaluate materials? And what frameworks can you use to evaluate the sustainability of a component? Our Eco-Analyzer tool and data validation. So this is looking at using that data to make sustainable decisions. And again, avoiding just looking at buzzwords and market trends. So you can actually use that data to make sure you're making an impact. Next is transparent and ethical supply chain. So, it's great to focus on the formula and the end component, but you really do need to pay attention to that supply chain. Make sure the facilities are making efforts to improve the sustainability of their operations, and make sure that the people who work in those facilities are being treated well, are being paid a fair wage. I mean, this is really a big piece of the puzzle when it comes to sustainability and the overall 360 view of the product. Next is inclusivity and diversity. When we look at packaging, this is really looking at how can you make the product and the packaging more accessible and user-friendly for all people. We are seeing a huge trend in this area of growth, and we continue to see that into the future. So it's a great area of innovation to focus on for brands. And then the last piece is social responsibility. So this is about partnering with like-minded organizations to make a larger impact, whether that's charities, material groups. There's a number of ways you can do this and integrate it into your sustainable strategy. So when you look at these categories, we circle these and combine them into our beauty with purpose approach. This is really working with brands to do a full view of their strategies in their entire product portfolio. And what this lets us do is understand the challenges they face and what their short, mid, and long-term goals are, so we can offer them the best solutions that fit their unique needs. Outside of that, we can definitely develop around specific needs, but this is the best way to really understand where the brands we work with are going. So it's something that we highly encourage any brands we work with to have that discussion so we can understand what they need. And I would encourage you to do with your suppliers as well. Today, we're mainly going to be focusing in this eco design and new materials section, as well as the eco analyzer, because that's really where where you get the most impact on your packaging decisions and the best way for you to evaluate the sustainability of your components. Another thing that you're going to notice as we go through this today is a lot of it focused on the beginning of life of the product. So really looking at what the brand and what the manufacturer can control. So how we're making sure there's a sustainable story in that product from the very beginning. And that way it's not all put on the consumer to figure out what to do with the product the end of life. And that's also where, as the brand and as the manufacturer, we really don't have control over what happens to that product once the consumer purchases it. So looking at the beginning of life of the product and making sure we're building a sustainable story and making an impact from the beginning is extremely important. One other thing that I always like to highlight in discussions like this is the partners in sustainability slide that we have. And again, this really drives home that point on collaboration. Internally, we have a big team of experts, engineers, designers, everyone I spoke on earlier, that work to develop our sustainable strategies, build our sustainable products, and make sure we're driving everything forward. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're taking a completely unbiased approach. We want to make sure we're auditing our processes, and we want to make sure that we're getting the latest and greatest information that's out there. So participation in groups and different certification processes are what really allow us to do that. So just to highlight a few and show you why this can be an important thing for you to look at as you're evaluating packaging suppliers or various components for your brand. On the top left, you see we are EcoVadis Silver rated. So if you're familiar with EcoVadis, they audit a facility, really look at their operations, their sustainability initiatives, and give a great baseline for the overall sustainability of the operation. So that provides full transparency to what's happening at the facility where your products are being made. We're members of the UN Global Compact and the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, to highlight a few. At the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, we participate in their Chemical Recycling Committee and their Refillable Packaging Committee. There's also a number of other great groups out there. We participate in the IBA. There's groups like the APR. Even if you don't want to become a member, I highly encourage you to look at these groups and take advantage of their resources. It's really a place where cross-industry experts from all different companies and even different areas combine their knowledge and look at new regulations that are coming down, build strategies, and also develop different tools that brands can use to make sure that they have that information at their fingertips. So it's really a great resource. The Pack Collective, so this is looking at the end of life of the product, and so many beauty products are too small to recycle, the deco can't be recycled, or they're mixed material. So PAC's looking to change that. So they're specifically working in the beauty industry, taking hard to recycle products and making sure that end of life is responsibly managed. So participating companies, it's a great way for them to create a controlled recycling stream for their product that their consumers can take advantage of. You'll notice a number of certifications here, like ISCC, SAI. Again, just looking at full transparency through certification is one of the best ways you can evaluate an operation, because it sets a standard that they have to comply to. I touched on Credo, Sephora, and Ulta Blacklist being our standard. And the last one is corporate citizenship down here in the bottom right. They're a third-party group of sustainability experts really working cross-industry. And we use groups like them, again, to evaluate new initiatives, bring in new information, and audit our processes. So something that we highly encourage. So again, to make sure you're taking a completely unbiased approach to sustainability when you work with groups like this. So that brings us to evaluating products and how do you design sustainable products? So in our company, we break it into 3 different categories. First is formulation, second is beauty and accessories, and third is packaging. So all of these different things combine to build one cohesive product and one cohesive customer experience. So it's really important to pay attention to every one. And there's different sustainable challenges that impact each area of these businesses, each area of these products as well. So today we're focusing on packaging. We only have 30 minutes, and you could do much longer on all of these. But again, if you are looking at the overall sustainability of your product, it's important to break it out and really look at the unique challenges facing each different category. So with that, starting off on the packaging. When we look at packaging, we really start with 3 categories and 3 main needs to build a sustainable component, or when you're evaluating stock components for a project, these same 3 categories apply. So the first is, how do I reduce the environmental impact of the product through the packaging? And that you really look at two different things. The first is the design strategy. So you're talking monomaterial, refillables, lightweighting, which I'll get into in the next couple slides. And then you're looking at the material choices. So, does it make sense to add recycled content? Should I look at bio-based packaging? Should I look at an alternative to plastic like paper? There's all these different things and that combine to build that one cohesive packaging strategy. Next up is, how do you develop sustainable products? So with that, we built a framework with our 6Rs. That's really our design checklist. Do we check one box and have a sustainable story? Can we make this product more sustainable? And does that make sense for the end goal of what this customer is trying to achieve? So those 6Rs are reduce, reuse, recycle, replace, respect, and rebirth. I have another slide we'll go in a little more in depth, but again, this is a great takeaway that anyone can have from this call today, is use that as your design checklist to see if your packaging has a sustainable story. And then third is promoting responsible procurement. So, I mentioned this earlier, but it really goes beyond the product, beyond the packaging. You really have to pay attention to the supply chain, because if you build this monomaterial product with a bunch of recycled content, but it's being manufactured in a facility that's not treating the people right, or not paying them fair wages, or not paying attention to their emissions and sustainable practices, then there's a whole nother issue there that's impacting the overall sustainable story behind the product and really the strength of that product and the sustainable story you're trying to build into it. So, you have to pay attention to the transparency of the supply chain where those products are being manufactured. So the first real design strategy that we use when developing new products. So this can be used for custom designs. It can also be used when evaluating a stock component for a project, is the 6Rs. So the first is reduce. So does this component use less material? Because then right off the bat, you're making an impact. You're using less product, is a lighter weight. There's all kinds of ways that a lightweight component has a sustainable benefit. Second is reuse. Does it make sense for this component to be refillable? And if so, can it be refilled or repurposed? And if it can be refilled, how many reuses are realistic? And that's a complex question. One, you have to look at how long that keepsake will last. And two, you have to look at your consumer and how likely your consumer is going to be to refill that product through your traditional distribution channels. 3 is recycle. So can this product be recycled? And if you're going to use a recycling claim, does it make sense to use that claim? As far, does it comply with your majority of the curbside recycling programs for the regions where you sell that product? If it can't be curbside recycled, can you at least make it recycle ready? So you're not going to make that claim now, but you're looking at monomaterial designs that, if you do have a collection scheme like a pack collective, or when recycling centers do new technology comes in that allows them to process more products, will it be ready to be recycled or more easily recycled? Fourth is replace. So how can you move away from using virgin plastics with this product? Can you add recycled content? Can you use a bioresin? Can you make it out of something different than plastic completely, like look at glass, metals, and papers? Number 5 is respect. So this is an overall design strategy. So as you're evaluating a component or a new design, does it have sustainability in mind from the start? If you're looking at something that could be monomaterial and is made from mixed materials, or you're looking for a more luxurious feel and it's going to have more weight, that's going to have an impact from the start. So paying attention to, just the overall strategy behind the component and what you're trying to achieve is what this focuses on. And then number 6 is rebirth. So this is really looking at the circular economy goals set forth by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and how can you build products that fit into that circular design strategy. So again, as you evaluate new custom designs, as you evaluate stock packaging for a project, this is a really simple way just to run it through a checklist and see if it has any of these attributes. If you have one, you already have a sustainable story. If you can check off more, then that story becomes even stronger. And so really just at a very simple level, this is a great way to evaluate packaging. Next up are the design strategies. So again, this can be used heavily within custom design, but it also applies to evaluating stock packaging and how it was designed and what strategies it's going to bring to that product. It also relates really closely to the 6 Rs. You'll see a lot of crossover here. But number one is lightweighting, which we've touched on. Number two is refillable. So does a refillable strategy make sense for this design, for this formula, for this product? And number three is design for disassembly. So this relates somewhat to that recycle category when you're looking at, a product that has to be mixed material. Is there a way you can build that where those different materials can be separated and processed differently in a scenario where they could be recycled? Number four is monomaterial, again, supporting that recycle ready, area of focus. And then number five is commercial ready. And this is a really important one. So many conversations around sustainable packaging have these big blue sky ideas that either will take a lot of time or a heavy investment to achieve. So having commercial ready product that has a strong sustainable story that's ready to go now is extremely important, especially if you're looking at your brand's immediate, short, and long-term goals. This is what's really going to help you bridge that gap. Maybe for your 5-year goal, it's going to take a certain level of investment, or there's a new technology that needs to be implemented for you to achieve that. Well, you have to bridge that gap somehow. So instead of doing nothing, you can use these commercial ready products to have an immediate impact on the sustainability of your packaging, and do that right away. So you're achieving your immediate goals, you're making progress towards your midterm, and even making progress towards your long-term sustainability goals in packaging. And once you kind of settle on what design strategy is best, that's where you start to focus on the materials. So this section is really focused on what we call proven materials. And so these are what we work with every day, what brands are very familiar with and work with every day. And it's also, they're all materials that have a high level of recognition by consumers. So, it's very easy to tell that sustainable story to your customer as you select packaging that uses these materials. So the first is PCR, looking at using post-consumer recycled content in the product. The second is plant-based packaging. The third is glass. The fourth is metal, and the fifth is paper. So we're just going to touch on all these at a high level because we only have 30 minutes today, but highly encourage you, whether you're working with WWP or a different manufacturer, to really do a deep dive into each material that makes sense for your package and understand the benefits as well as the considerations, because again, there's no real single solution to sustainability. There's always going to be certain challenges. So understanding what those are from the start is really going to allow you to make the best decision. So PCR is really a popular category. You're looking at, that post-consumer regrind, those products that have gone through the consumer cycle, they've been recycled and turned into new materials that are now put into a product. We focus on PET, PE, polypropylene, and ABS when it comes to recycled content. And of that, the PET, PE, and polypropylene tend to be the bigger focus. It's a popular category because, one, you can use your stock tools. Two, you keep that same look and feel that your customer is familiar with. And three, there's a lot of new laws and regulations coming around the recycled content and plastic packaging. So by using PCR, you're making sure that you're getting ready and compliant with those laws. Most common is still kind of in that 25 to 50% range, but there's a lot of brands looking at going to that 50, 75, and 100% recycled content. The main consideration there is you're going to have a certain color range. PCR does come with a little bit of a defect. So from pitting, some color tinting, and the higher PCR load you have, the higher that defect's going to be. And it does vary from batch to batch because it is consumer recycled product. So the feedstock does vary. The other thing to consider here is for formula contact, looking at PCRs that have food grade certifications. That's really going to fall into your PET, your PE, and your polypropylene categories. Your ABS typically comes from recycled auto parts, so it's going to be darker in color, gray or black, and not have that food grade certification in most cases. Next category is plant-based packaging. So the first one is sugarcane resin. And this is a really great material because you essentially, an oversimplified explanation is you're replacing the petroleum base with a renewable base that comes from that sugarcane, a sugarcane ethanol that's then turned into that plastic. The end result is a polyethylene that performs just like a traditional petroleum-based polyethylene, and it can be recycled in cases where the package is recyclable just like a traditional petroleum-based polyethylene. We own a tube factory, so a lot of the biggest category for us when it comes to sugarcane resins is definitely tubes. And the other really strong story behind using sugarcane beyond being a renewable resource is that as that plant grows, it sequesters carbon from the environment and that traps it in the material. So it actually drastically lowers the carbon footprint of the product when compared to a petroleum plastic. On the consumer level, you do have to consider that there can be confusion between bio-based and biodegradable. So this is not a biodegradable material, it's a bio-based material. So it's using that renewable resource, and that's really the story that you need to make sure you're telling. Another plant-based package that we offer is our plant fiber polymer. We also have a newer version called Nature to Need. And what these are, they are completely plastic-free, plastic alternative resins. So they come from they're plant-based. They come from the byproduct of farming. So you're not impacting the food source. You're using that second and third generation biomass that's waste anyways, and turning it into a new product that can be given that second life into a package. They do have a few really unique characteristics. One is that they're heavier weight than a traditional plastic, so they add this premium weight and feel. They do tend to require custom tooling, so that's something to consider. We're always developing new stock tools for them. There's other similar materials on the market that are being developed in the same way, but for very specific applications, you're probably going to need a custom tool. Because they are plant-based, they have that same carbon sequestration benefit. As the plants grow, it traps that carbon in the product, so it lowers the overall carbon footprint of the product in the end. And as a material, they do degrade, but we typically recommend against degradable claims. So, packaging usually isn't going to meet the Green Guide's requirements when it comes to biodegradable claims. So best to stay away from that. And, if you want compostable claims, you have to do third-party testing in the final format to see if it meets that requirement. But even if it does, a lot of compost facilities don't necessarily want packaging. They prefer plants and more organic materials. So really the benefit there is that it won't be leaching chemicals as it breaks down in a landfill like a plastic would. Glass is another great category. There's a high level of consumer recognition, very luxe look and feel, and glass is also highly recyclable. So it's something consumers know how to process, and it's very recognizable. The really consideration there is that it's heavier and can have higher breakage, and price point can sometimes be higher as well. So it really depends on the product and the price point you're trying to meet to see if glass is a good fit, but always something to consider. Metals are a great category. A huge benefit here is that metals in general are typically infinitely recyclable. So you look at plastics, as you recycle them time and time again, the quality gets lower, so they're usually downcycled into a lower quality product. Whereas a metal, as you recycle it, maintains that same quality and go right back into the same type of product. So really a strong recycling story here. Lots of deco options, and you can also get a really premium look and feel. There's a number of metals you can work with to get different weights, different appearances, things like that, and different attributes to the product. But metals are definitely a category to look at when it comes to sustainable packaging. Next up is paper. So papers, again, have great consumer recognition. They're generally seen as sustainable by consumers, so it's a good category to start in. And it's a good way to move away from plastics. There's a lot of things that you can do with paper as far as decoration, a lot of things that can impact the recyclability when it comes to the adhesives and finishes that you use. But there's a huge opportunity here for the materials that you use from the start. So even if it can't be recycled, you can look at using recycled content. You can look at FSC forested papers, tree-free papers like hemp paper and stone papers, and really achieve a unique look and feel to your product. And that brings us to our next area. So, those who are proven materials, this next section is what we call future focused materials. So this is really what we see as that next wave, going beyond those materials everyone uses today, to new technologies or new materials that are really bringing us forward to another level of sustainability or solving a problem that those proven materials couldn't. So I'm just going to highlight a few today, but we're constantly evaluating new materials and testing them and seeing how they can be used within package manufacturing. So the first here is ocean plastics. A lot of you may have heard of this, and there's a number of challenges with ocean plastic that worry that worry people when it comes to evaluating this for their packaging. So the first is the ethical concern. Are the people who are collecting these materials being treated fairly? They're making sure there's not forced labor and there's fair wages being paid. The second is lead time, because a lot of time they're not collected until there's a need. And the third is the quality. So because this is recycled material that's littered into the environment and exposed to the elements, there can be a wider range of quality defect when compared to traditional PCRs. But the good news is there's a lot of ways to offset that. So, we recently launched an ocean plastic collection that used ocean plastics from OceanWorks, or who we've partnered with on this. So on the product, you'll see the OceanWorks guaranteed in the decoration. And what that means is that there's full traceability to that plastic. So you know where it's collected. You have traceability to the fact that there were jobs at fair wages being created and that people were being treated correctly. And you also have traceability to the quality. So that guarantee comes with a better level of quality, a more predictable level of quality. So typically ocean plastics come in you'll see them run in darker colors that hide more of that defect. But if you see that collection we launched, it's a lighter blue tone and you still don't see the defects. So it speaks to the fact that it's being closely monitored and you have that extra documentation. So, there are ways to address this. And what's great about that is you're going beyond PCR, right? You're adding that recycled content, but you're adding that social benefit of creating jobs, and you're collecting litter from the environment to give it that second life instead of just letting it sit there for hundreds and thousands of years. So, ocean plastics are a really exciting category that's been growing a lot within the packaging space. IPET is up next. So this is a virgin material. So unlike a lot of these that are using alternatives, this is a virgin plastic, but the benefit here is it's really durable. So if you're looking at a refill scenario and you want something to be, crystal clear, really premium look, and have a long lifespan, this is a great option. The other benefit is that it runs pretty well in ABS tools. So traditionally, a lot of the stock tools for our industry are using ABS, and with a big push to move away from styrenic resins, those are becoming obsolete. So how do you repurpose those? Well, the IPT runs pretty well. Usually you have to do either some type of minimal modification to the tool to make it run efficiently, and then you can replace that ABS. So it's something to always evaluate. It's not going to work in all cases, but it can be a good solution to avoid having to build an entirely new set of tools and to repurpose those old tools that may not be used anymore. And then the third one here is molecular recycled resins. So we've partnered with Eastman. We work really closely with them in R&D new materials, and we've been doing a lot of work with their Crystal Renew series and their Crystal One Renew series. And what molecular recycling is you're essentially broadening that recycling stream. So with your PCRs, you have to have a clean product that's certain colors, certain types of resins, and free of contaminants for it to be ground up and recycled and put back into the manufacturing stream. Whereas with molecular technology, you can accept textiles, carpets, things that would typically end up in a landfill, break them down to that molecular level, and that creates a brand new resin out of them. Again, this is an overly simplified explanation, but essentially what you do is you have that wider stream and you end up with this brand new resin. And what happens is you also get rid of all that PCR defect. So you end up with a crystal clear resin at the end. So the Crystal Renew resins are a PETG grade, where the Crystal One Renew are a PET grade that comply with the California RIC1 recycling code restrictions. So it's really a great option, especially for those categories that, PETGs where you don't have a lot of PCRs available and you need to keep that crystal clear look. The other benefit here is it's actually a certified recycled content claim. So the most common versions of the 25 and the 50% recycled content, all the facilities that process them have to have this ISCC certification that you see in the top right, including our factory. So it's a chain of command through the entire value chain of when this material is created to when it's processed. So you have a full audit trail that you do have that certified recycled content in the package. So it's a really unique new material that's, it's just coming on the market. The facilities to produce it are just being, built out now. So it's something to definitely pay attention to as it grows and begins to be used more widely. And that brings us to our Eco Analyzer tool. So this is how we use data to drive better sustainability decisions. So again, going beyond buzzwords, we built this tool to follow the EPA standard for the emissions for these materials that we evaluate, and we also had it validated by a third party in corporate citizenship. So essentially what this tool does is you take one product as a benchmark and you compare it to your new design, or even that same product side by side with different materials, and it gives you different statistics. So the first is what the material use is and material reduction. Second is emissions use, emissions reduction, and third is how a refill life cycle impacts it. So we're pretty much at time here, but just to go through this really quickly, with the EcoPack tube, you can see, this one's evaluating a 50 millimeter size in a traditional tube to our EcoPack design made in 100% bioresin. You have 93% less emissions per piece and 19% less plastic. And you can build a strong story like for every 1 million tubes, 5 tons of plastic are saved, and really show how that impact's being made. Our refill revolution stick is a refillable component that instead of replacing that full mechanism, you're just replacing the cup and the formula. And so again, after 3 reuses, we kind of see that as the industry standard. That's a realistic expectation for consumers. You reduce those emissions by 72%. When you add PCR content to that, it has an even bigger impact by reducing emissions by 85%. And then our Color View lipstick, this is a mono-material, lightweight design, 100% polypropylene, and we compared this to a more traditional mixed material lipstick design. So with that, you have 85% less emissions per piece plus 12% less plastic. So by going through this type of data, you can evaluate your different design decisions, your different material decisions, different recycled content loads, and really see what impact you're making. It does make certain assumptions just because, there's a wide range of products and that are used here, and a lot of brands we work with want us to compare their benchmark as well. So we have to make certain assumptions. So if you're doing a formal LCA, you're still going to want to go kind of beyond what we're giving you here. But this is a great baseline to make sure that you're using data to make sustainable decisions. And just to show you real quick in the last minute here, what we can do is we can pull this data into charts, compare your benchmark to the new design, and show you how that impact's being made. This is all the same information from the previous slide. And then in that same scenario where it's a refill type product, we can add a different number of reuses and show you how that carbon footprint's impacted as you use that product over and over again. So whether it's with us, there's a number of other, or if you have your own solution you're looking at for something like this, using this type of data to make your design decisions on your packaging and your material decisions is really what's important. It's what makes sure that you're building a true sustainable story into the product and going beyond just the buzzwords that you're hearing, and truly making the best decision you can for your packaging. So that's what we have to cover for today. Again, I know it's a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions, and looking forward to connecting with some of you soon. Thank you.